Welcome back to the first Fidelity Bank NCAA Tournament watch party. Barry Tramel along with Desmond Mason. We are at Red Prime Steakhouse, and Desmond, Wichita State goes down. Virginia Commonwealth, the Cinderella of the ball last year, pulls out the victory. And what do you think of in terms of can confidence from one NCAA tournament go over to the next year? In other words, can VCU live off of some of the success of last season?
I think they can. I think it was an opportunity where they got into the tournament. They won basketball games. They got their confidence up in being in that atmosphere. And when you're in an environment like that, it's going to take confidence to win games. And so it's no different than the NBA playoffs. Once you're there, the more confident you get, the more comfortable you get. And, again, they showed it today.
Shaka Smart, the Cinderella coach, got Virginia Commonwealth from a play-in game to the Final Four last year, mentioned further jobs, didn't take any. Now he's even further adding to his resume, probably in line for maybe the Illinois job, which is a big-time job. In your career, did you come across coaches who just got hot and sort of rode the magic carpet to greater things?
Absolutely. I was in the early stages of Nate McMillan's coaching career, and when Paul Westphal was fired, he got that job. And Nate really was – there was a couple of coaches that got skipped to get to Nate. It was Bob Weiss and Dwayne Casey, and those guys were both very much head coaching material, and they got skipped, and they gave Nate the job, who was the third assistant down the line. But he had great assistants up under him, and he just got hot. He became he figured it out. He was an ex-player. He knew when to rest the guys. He knew how to deal with guys like Gary and Vin Baker, and he got hot, and before you know it, he became this great coach. I think I heard he got let go today from Portland, if I'm not mistaken. But again, he had a wonderful run as a head coach, and he's definitely going to be a head coach again.
When you're a player in the NCAA tournament, do you pay attention much? I mean, if you're playing Bobby Knight, I guess you do. But do you pay much attention to who the coach even is on the other team? I mean, does that ever enter into your mind?
As a college player, outside of your conference, there's only a few coaches you really knew, and it would be coaches like Coach Krzyzewski, Coach Knight, Coach Smith. But outside of that, it was really, the guys that you knew in conference. So you really didn't pay a lot of attention to the other coaches on the other end of the bench.
Billy Donovan, knocked you guys out in 2000.
Absolutely.
That's a guy that played a little before your time at Providence, but since has gone on to win 2 national titles. But when you guys played Florida, did you really even know who Billy Donovan was?
I mean, honestly, there's no disrespect to Coach Donovan. As a college guy, you're not doing the research on the coaches. We definitely knew who Mike Miller was and Udonis Haslem and those guys, but we didn't really know a lot about the coach because, again, we hadn't played him that much, so we hadn't paid a lot of attention.
You mentioned a couple of guys that were on that Florida team that beat you. You played against previous round. You beat Samuel Dallenbar, who's still playing in the league. When you get to the NBA, is there still a lot of talk among either teammates or opponents about the old days of the NCAA tournament and bragging rights on who beat who?
Yeah, only if you're in the only if you're on that person's team. If you're not on a team, there's not a lot of talk about it, but it's kind of like a league-wide rule where, we may bet a dinner or something like that. If your team plays each other in the NCAA tournament or any time throughout the course of the year, it's an automatic bet. You lose, you buy the other guy dinner. And so we always have that kind of betting camaraderie going on. But unless you're on the team, you're not talking about the good old days. If I'm paying Samuel Dallenberg and he's on the other team, I don't have a lot to say to him anyway. So.
Wow. Earlier this week, John Calipari said that the magic of the NCAA tournament is the one-and-done nature of this tournament, where you lose and you're out. Think back to your losses in the NCAA tournament. You lost to Duke in '98. You lost to Auburn in '99. Close games both. Then you lost to Florida, another close game in the Elite Eight of 2000. How much do those losses eat at you, especially maybe that 2000 game, which I've always thought the regional final is the biggest game of the year, even more so than a Final Four game, because reaching the Final Four is in many ways the summit. Anything past that, sort of gravy.
Exactly.
I mean, is that a loss that just eats at you the rest of your life?
I would honestly say that Auburn loss. That was a game we felt we should have won. They have a kid comes off the bench. He goes nuts from behind the three-point line, and he really changed the game for him. The Florida loss, we knew we were playing against a really good team and quite a few really good basketball players, and it was going to be a dog fight to the end. And, if you win, that's wonderful. You move on, and if you lose, you know what, you played a hard-fought game, especially where that game was played. But I feel like, to me personally, the Auburn loss really ate at me for quite a while because I felt that, we get that game, we go on to Ohio State, and I felt we could beat Ohio State. They have Michael Redd and I think it was Scooney Penn at the time at the point, and I felt we could have beat them. Michael's a great friend of mine, and we've had the discussion quite a few times. But that game really aided me because I felt that was going to be a great road for us to the Final Four.
One of the things that we look at is in the NCAA tournament, it's really a series of 4-team tournaments. You play on a Thursday or Friday, and if you win, you play on Saturday and Sunday, and then you move on to a different tournament. And it's that way through through this week's games, and it'll be that next week in the regional, and then the following week in the Final Four. Tom Izzo, I said I picked Michigan State to win it. Tom Izzo, 16-3 in game 2 of this set of tournaments. How tough is it? You find out you're playing Hofstra or whoever. You got 4 or 5, sometimes 6 days, to prepare. But then you got 1 day to prepare for the second game.
Exactly.
How tough is that turnaround game where the scouting report is condensed, the practice time is condensed? How tough is that on teams to get ready for that quick turnaround game?
It's really tough, and more than anything, it's the rest. From a player standpoint, the coaches are very well prepared. I mean, they're scouting everybody. They're not looking past anybody. So you're going to have set up scouting reports, and they're going to have to do minimal as it pertains to the turnaround from a scouting report standpoint and preparation. But for the players, you got to get your rest. You got to absorb all this information in a short amount of time, and then you have to go out and execute. And I think just that's what get guys. They get mentally and physically tired really quick because now it's kind of bang, 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 bang for a while until you get to the next round. And for us, the good thing about us is we had a pretty good bench. I mean, we had a young bench. We had a great bench, and that really relieved some of the guys in the starting lineup.
Another thing that always strikes me about the NCAA tournament is most teams play in traditional arenas, nice arenas, but traditional arenas. And when you played, you were in Gallagher-Iba, the old, the small version, the 6381 capacity. And then you go to the NCAA tournament, and often you got in a cavernous dome. You played in the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis. You played in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. What kind of adjustment is that for a shooter in terms of getting used to the background and the shooting perspective?
It takes a while to get used to it. The depth perspective it throws you off big time. We had our crowds, our student fans, student section was just right up on the basket, and it really closed down the back. So it was almost like playing in a YMCA gym where you kind of have this backdrop. But when you're in a dome, it just kind of goes on forever through the backboard, whether you're at the free throw line. It was normally the free throw line or at the top of the key shooting that threw guys off. From the corners and the wings, you were always somewhat pretty good. But once you got to the point where you're standing right in front of the basket, it just seemed like it went on forever. So it's definitely an adjustment.
You played, if I counted right, I think you played 8 NCAA tournament games. When you look over those 8 games, what's your favorite memory?
I love that whole East Coast trip. Our senior year. I mean, it was kind of it was it for all of us. We all had everything to lose at that point in time. It was kind of do or die scenario. We won't get the opportunity to do this again. And so really not one game specifically would stand out. I would say that experience of that whole trip, again, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. My parents were on a trip who had never been to the East Coast. A lot of guys' parents had never been to the East Coast. And we were together every minute of the day, roommating with each other. I mean, it was just so different than anything else we had done, and so any of the other tournaments previously. And so to have the opportunity to spend that kind of quality time with guys that became brothers, that meant everything to me. So those are my fondest memories, that East Coast swing. Coming back home was tough. We had missed class. We didn't even know what to expect when we got back. We were gone for so long, but memories that I always remember.
What's your least favorite memory of those 8 games?
I want to go before those games start. First, I'm gonna go to losing at home on senior night to OU. That's gonna be my least favorite memory.
Last game at the old Gallagher-Iba.
At the old Gallagher-Iba Arena, and then I think I would honestly go again back to that Auburn game. You expect guys to come in and make an impact off the bench, especially if they're a 1 or 2 rotation guy, but you don't expect a 3 or 4 rotation guy to come in and beat you. And that happened to us, and that didn't happen to us any time before that. And so for me, that is by far my least favorite. And then losing to Florida Atlantic to break our streak at home. So that hurt me also.
Well, Desmond, this has been fun talking about this NCAA tournament in 2012, but also talking about the old days, the gory years of Eddie Sutton when Desmond Mason and the gang rode high in March Madness. Hey, thanks for joining us here. We're at Red Prime Steakhouse for this first Fidelity Bank NCAA tournament watch party. We'll do it again soon. Thanks a lot.